Ya estamos listos. Bienvenido. Seminario de hoy es la relación de entrenador y atleta. En este seminario web ofrece traducción simultánea en 6 idiomas. Pueden elegir su idioma con el botón del globo en la parte inferior de la pantalla. Pueden agregar cualquier pregunta que tengan para los exponentes en el chat o en la opción de preguntas y respuestas QA. Para celebrar el Día de los Entrenadores Globales, que se celebró el 25 de septiembre, queremos reconocer el increíble trabajo que los entrenadores de todo el mundo hacen al diario, dándoles las gracias. Aseguremos de tomar un tiempo a terminar este seminario de darles gracias a nuestros entrenadores por todo lo que hacen. Voy a hablar sobre mí. Mi nombre es Rosalino. Soy parte de Olimpiadas Especiales Paraguay desde hace 11 años. He participado en diferentes competencias y talleres de liderazgo. Soy mensajero de salud, presidente del Consejo Consultor de Líderes en Paraguay y miembro del Consejo Regional de Atletas Líderes de Olimpiadas Especiales América Latina. Hoy nos gustaría compartirles un video de nuestro patrocinador Gallagher. Gallagher ha creado videos de atletas de Olimpiadas Especiales, conversando con distintas personas con antecedentes en el deporte.
Speaking with different people with history in sports, the series of Gallagher Mentors, it's available through the YouTube webpage. And they do share a powerful message in regards to sports, coaching, and also the impact of Special Olympics. Okay, let's run the video now. Thanks.
Something that we've talked about just very briefly is kind of your struggle with memory sometimes. So how does that play out on the field? How does that affect your game?
Yeah, so it's hearing and memory. So it's kind of like words that are like the same or that sound the same. So my ears will hear it, but by the time it gets to my brain, it'll be something different. So that can be like, you can just imagine like what could happen out on the field.
So for you then, is it important for your coach to kind of tell you what you need to know ahead of the game? Is that a way that you kind of work with that? Or is it better if, he's kind of just repeats himself? Mm-hmm. Like what's helpful for you?
I think if he gets in my face and says, hey, we're going to do this and that, and looks me in the eye and says, hey, focus, and then talks slow, loud, and then that's basically it. Yeah. He'll get through to me. He knows me, Coach Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah, he knows.
La exponente número 1 es...
So, our speaker number 1 will be Sophia Jowett. Sophia Jowett, PhD, and Professor of Psychology in the University of Louisville in the UK. The work of research really, it's around interpersonal relationships, leadership, and communication in sports, including education and business. and they do offer exciting projects. The results of the research have been published in many scientific versions and consultations. They've been able to showcase the work of different coaches in the world. Some points of very important impact throughout the world. It's the work in sports and also in training for coaching in the UK. Specifically, when we talk about the national government, we know President Sophia Jowett.
Представим профессора Софию Jowett, профессор психологии, специалист по изучаемому вопросу.
Muchas gracias, Rosalino. Thank you very much, Rosalino, for the introduction.
Розалино, за презентацию мою.
And thank you so very much to Special Olympics for inviting
Огромное
me
спасибо специальному Олимпийскому комитету за приглашение.
Present the work that I have done around coach-athlete relationships
Вы
over the
представить
past
ту работу, которую я
20-25
проделала
years.
по теме отношений спортсменов и тренеров за последние годы.
So without any further ado, I'd like to get started because there's quite a lot material to get on. So
очень много материала у меня для представления, поэтому прежде чем начать,
maybe I can pause here to ask the organizers. I can
Прошу
hear the Russian
организаторов.
interpreter, and I don't know whether that should be the case. Is there anything we can do to remove the Russian interpreter from my ear?
Sophia, we're just working on that right now. Apologies for this. We'll have it resolved very quickly.
That's
I'll give you
absolutely
the call.
great. Thank you very, very much. I got a little bit distracted and I wasn't quite sure whether I should expect that or not, but thanks, Fiona.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, the Russian interpreter, he needs to be reassigned. That's why his voice is being heard in the English channel as well.
Thank you. So if I may, thank you very much again. I'm delighted to be here with you today. I would like to share the work that we have done around coach-athlete relationships from a research point of view and share the knowledge we have accumulated over the years with you. The title of my presentation today is The Transformative Power of Quality Coach-Athlete Relationships. And in this talk, if we can move to the next slide, I would like to address 3 questions. Why is the coach-athlete relationship important for you coaches and for coaching more generally? And if the relationship is important and is central to your coaching, what does a good quality relationship look like? And the last question I'd like to address with you, how we develop better quality relationships that really work with each one athlete in our teams. So let's move to the next slide and let's try to consider this first question. So why is the coach-athlete relationship important? Maybe you can use the chat function to maybe let us know what you think about the importance of relationship. How does it help you as a coach to work with your athletes? What is significant or important to you? Why do you develop connections, and why do you feel it is important? So if you can tell us what you think, that'll be fantastic. And whilst you are typing or thinking the question, I would like to give you some of my insights around this question. We believe that from the research we have done over the years, that the relationship that coaches develop with each one athlete in their team is central, is the heartbeat of coaching, is what it is what makes coaching really effective and successful. And if one neglects the relationship, really has the potential not to ever achieve the athlete's potential and make their coaching as effective and successful. Now, you may be familiar with the concepts that I will introduce next. So if we can move to the next slide, you may have referred to your coaching as coach-centered or athlete-centered. And indeed, coaching is changing. And I will dare to say that when I was coached, I was very much coached using a coach-centered approach, whereby my coach was at the center of coaching. I was at the heart of it, was the protagonist. He orchestrated all the proceedings around my training sessions. He led, he instructed, he provided feedback. I was never I was asked a question about what I like, what I dislike, what are my preferences. I was never asked for my feedback about how training was going for me, what were my goals, and so on. So many years ago, coach-centered approach was the approach to coach athletes more often than not. Now we are moving, and I believe we have moved to the other sort of end of this coaching continuum that we have. And often coaches, if they are asked, they will say that they coach through an athlete-centered approach of coaching. And what do they mean by that? What they mean by that is that in their coaching, they very much put at the heart the athlete. At the center of coaching is the athlete. And in that approach is expected that the athlete knows their needs, understands their goals. They're even able to design their training sessions and have very much ownership in what they're doing. So if we can please now move to the next slide, so I can show you a visual representation of these approaches. As you can see, they sit at the end of the opposite ends of the continuum that we say is coaching. So you've got the coach-centered approach on one hand and the athlete-centered approach on the other. Now, what the problem is that if you adapt or employ one approach is that one approach, like the coach-centered approach, plays down the role of the athlete. And when you go on the other side, on the athlete-centered approach, that approach downplays the role of the coach. And neither of these approaches actually talk about the importance of the relationship between the coach and the athlete, the connection that these two people have, and it is important to have in order to bring about change. It is so important that these two people are on the same wavelength. They have a common ground. They understand one another. But these two approaches don't speak in these terms. And for that reason, more recently, in the last couple of years, we introduced another approach, if we can move to the next slide, which we call the combined coach-athlete centered approach, where now we see that the coach and the athlete come together, and their relationship, and what connects them is at the heart of coaching so much that it can define their coaching, whether the relationship, whether it is a good relationship, a bad relationship, or an indifferent relationship, that relationship can be reflected in how good or bad their coaching is. So here what we are trying to do is to really highlight that there is a lot of reciprocity, a lot of give and take between the coaches and the athletes. And that is crucial for success and satisfaction for not just the athletes growth, development, and progression, as well as their happiness. But also it is important for athletes, for coaches' growth and satisfaction and happiness if coaches and athletes are together. So I'd like you to reflect, because this last approach that I have just discussed to you may be new and you may not have heard it before, to reflect on a couple of points. If we can please move to the next slide. I'd like you to reflect on this new approach because for me it acknowledges and captures the joint contributions of both the coach and the athlete. This approach is the one that brings the coach and the athlete together and highlights that unless these two people are together, they understand one another, they know one another, they create a safe environment for one another to support and challenge, we really miss something that is so critical to coaching. And clearly, this approach talks to relationship, to that bond, you know. But what is this phenomenon that we call coach-athlete relationship? If I asked you, what does a good quality relationship look like? Each one of you may give me very different answers, but I'm interested nevertheless. So if we can turn to the next slide, and I will ask you this very question, and please use the chat function to insert your answers. What does a good quality relationship look like to you? When do you know that you actually have a good bond, a good connection with your athlete? If you can just perhaps put some keywords to kind of capture the quality of that relationship. I can see some feedback coming through, some responses, which is great to see. Trust, respect, encouragement you mentioned. Please let them come through. That'll be good to see how each one of you think and about relationships. That is really great. Okay, keep them coming as I talk. Let me just tell you what we have found through our research. We have dedicated a lot of time, a lot of energy, because it is important that we capture And we have collated all these responses over the years, and we developed a framework that captures the relationship that coaches and athletes develop through a framework that has the capacity to much more easier capture what it is, a very simple and elusive phenomenon. So here it is. If we can turn to the next slide, this is the model. And can you please reveal all the points that I have? Closeness, commitment, complementarity, and co-orientation. That is it. So our relationships with our athletes contain 4 key ingredients, 4 dimensions. The first dimension is closeness, and closeness captures the affective bond that the coach and the athlete develop, their feelings, their emotions. And we have found, like you have highlighted to us just now, that there are 4 relational properties under affective closeness: trust, respect, appreciation, and liking the coach or the athlete. So trust, respect, appreciation, and liking are the affective components of closeness. And if you feel that you have trust and respect, appreciation, and you like your athlete, then it is more likely to connect at the affective level. If trust and respect, appreciation, and liking are not quite there, then perhaps the quality of the relationship is likely to go a little bit down, and closeness won't be as optimal as it can be. So think about it. How do you trust, respect, and appreciate your own relationships in terms of closeness? Commitment is the next dimension in the relationship that you develop with your athletes. Commitment reflects the willingness, the desire, the intentions, your thoughts to maintain a close relationship with your athletes over time. Commitment is the bond that, or the glue that keeps you together, especially during difficult times, when your athletes perhaps has an injury or they feel exhausted and burned out for whatever reasons, when the athletes experience a performance dip. All of this and other lows that we may experience as athletes or as coaches can destabilize the quality of the relationship, the ways that you work with your athletes. But commitment, your intention to work long-term with that athlete, will keep you together during these difficult times. But also during success, the relationship can be destabilized. Are you responsive to your athlete competitions? Do you employ a friendly stance? And are you comfortable in each other's presence? So complementarity or cooperation, collaboration is equally important and captures your behaviors, what you actually do with one another, you know, the behavioral exchanges that you have on the pitch, in the pool, on the track. And last but not least, co-orientation reflects the degree to which you have established a common ground with one another. Do you know each other? Do you understand each other? What is your shared knowledge and understanding? And this common ground, this co-orientation, this alignment of goals, preferences, and so on and so forth, will be very different from athlete to athlete. That will be very, very different with each one athlete in the team, as of course your closeness, commitment, and complementarity. So here we are talking about the dyadic, this two-person relationship you develop with your athlete, that is crucial, that is the vehicle that takes you from place A to place B. B is a better place. And the better the your relationship, the easiest, the quicker you can arrive to your desired goals. If we can move to the next slide, please. So now I'd like you to think, now that you know what is this phenomenon that we call coach-athlete relationship and what a good quality relationship looks like, I'd like you to think, how can you develop through your behaviors, through the things that you do as a coach, higher levels of closeness? How can you achieve better trust, better respect, better appreciation, better liking, interpersonal liking? How can you like it's a little bit more? How can you develop closeness? And the same, I'd like to invite you through commitment. How can you develop this long-term orientation toward your athlete? What can you do? And the same for your athlete, because let's be honest, you know, the athlete will have their own perceptions and experiences about the relationship. So you need to ensure that your athletes trust and like you and is committed with you. So what can you do to ensure that there is commitment? And complementarity. How can you cooperate much better with your athletes? And how can you develop that shared knowledge and understanding? And the bigger that knowledge it is, and the bigger your understanding, the better. Okay, we don't have the time to look at your responses, but I do appreciate that you have inserted some of your thoughts, and I will look at them later on. But let me just, next slide, please, give you some examples of how you can improve closeness, commitment, complementarity, and orientation. here it is, just a couple from closeness. Be honest, be reliable, be consistent, be predictable. It helps with closeness. So closeness, and speak from the heart, speak your feelings, share what you feel. From a commitment point of view, it is very important to develop individualized programs for your athletes. So your athletes, they know that you invest in them. Specifically, you set clear goals for individuals and your teams if you work in a team environment. And of course, try to involve your athletes in the decision making, particularly if it involves them. Complementarity, lead and follow. So try to work together and keep your communication and feedback simple, but make it impactful. Okay, support your athletes, challenge your athletes, but I will also ask you to consider that, to open that an environment whereby your athletes can also challenge and support you when and if need be. Co-orientation, just communicating with, trying to ask questions, be curious, so that you expand that shared knowledge and understanding that you have between the two of you. Next slide, please. So an invitation here. I would like you to think of the 3+1 Cs model that I introduced to you today, and then maybe reflect and assess your relationship with each one athlete in the team, in the group that you coach. Is there close enough? Is there commitment there? Do you cooperate well? And particularly think those athletes that perhaps your connections, your relationships are quite loose at the moment. They're not well established. What can you do to develop better, stronger relationships with these athletes? Think of your actions. How do you behave when you greet your athletes? Is it anything more you can do? Can you ask them an open-ended question? How are you today? How was school? How was work? How is family? Is it something that troubles you? Instruct, but also invite them to give you some feedback about your instructions, the way you train them, and show your interest in them. Next slide, please. And I would like to conclude. I wish I had more time to delve into the details of everything that I highlighted to you today, but I hope you have taken something of value. And I'd like to conclude by saying that the quality of the coach-athlete relationship can be a very powerful vehicle. Think of the relationship as a vehicle that moves you, as I said earlier, from place A to place B, and B, it's a much better place. Now you need to fuel that vehicle with positive and effective communication. So keep the communication channels open. And in that way that you will create a relational climate, a social environment within which you as a coach and your athletes are happy and productive. Thank you very much for your time.
Nuestro exponente número 2 es Justus Wolf. Es el entrenador en jefe del equipo alemán de alpino desde el 2011, trabajando en el Comité Nacional Paralímpico y la Asociación Alemana de Deporte para Discapacitados. Del 2005 al 2011 entrenó clubes de esquí y al equipo U18 de la Asociación Regional de Esquí de Paraguay de esquí alpino. Tiene certificaciones en ciencia del deporte y periodismo deportivo. Justus recibió varios premios, como Premio al Entrenador del año 2015 por la Confederación Alemana de Deportes Olímpicos, el Premio al Entrenador del año 2019 por la Asociación Regional de Deportes. Presentamos a Justus Wolf.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Rosalino, for the introduction, and thank you, Professor Jowett, for the really interesting theory coach-athlete relationship. And in the following, when I will present something more from my on-field experiences and from my experiences as a coach, you will get that a lot of points of the presentation from Professor Jowett will overlap with my experiences in the practice. I'm really happy to be here today, and it's really interesting because I'm here on behalf of the International Ski Federation FIS, and we as a para-alpine circuit, so the sports for the alpine skiing sport for people with physical disabilities, is brand new to FIS since the summer. So this is a really interesting fact or key fact. So for me now, I'm 11 years now on the German para-alpine ski team. I'm acting as a head coach of the committee, and this means I have athletes with several disabilities, physical disabilities. So we have the visually impaired athletes on one side, and we have the PI or physical impaired athletes on the other hand, which means there are standing athletes that have several amputation, they have cerebral paralysis or other disabilities but they are all standing. And we have a category of sitting athletes that are paralyzed or have an amputation of both legs. So this means they're like a broad spectrum of different physical disabilities and a need for individual treatment. You will get for sure some parallels to your work as special Olympic coaches, not just the governance parallels, not linked to the Olympic Federation in some countries, also on the work on the field with special needs or the socialization of the parents or the environment of the athletes. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yes. So first of all, I want to have a look on which influences on athletes I experienced in my career now. It started even before I came to the team I'm coaching now. I started, I guess, I was on the university, so it's already nearly 20 years of coaching. Even I'm still quite young, but on first we have the physical abilities of athletes, and this is obvious. This is like everyone will say, yeah, this is it. It's the strength, endurance, how flexible an athlete is. But there are several more aspects that make an athlete a good athlete. So what gets more and more important the last few years in my coaching is the mental abilities of an athlete. This is not even just the motivation he has for daily training. It's in the end, it's for sure the competitive strength that makes him in competitive sports a good athlete, a really good athlete. And this is when he has the ability to transfer the training, the training performance to competitive performance. And this is really a key point in daily training, to create situations where you try to simulate competitive situations and make the athletes have it easier in competition to perform. Then we have the equipment. We have to decide between different sports on this, because if you, for example, a swimmer, you just need a swimming cap and that's it. But if you like a cyclist, it makes a big difference if you have a good cycle or not so good cycle. And for example, in my sport with para-alpine, we have the athletes with prosthetics, which make a big difference between how you perform in the end. And it's really a difference. For example, if you have a good sit ski for paralyzed athletes, or you have just a cheap one or old one who has not the same abilities to help them to perform the best. And for sure, we have the personal environment of athletes. That is always a big key factor. This is not only the family and the job, it's the experience they made in the past. It's the experience they made with other coaches, experience with a team, if you're in a team sport, and all teams. And so this is what is really a key factor, and in the end is probably one of the biggest parts to make a development athlete improve to a high performance athlete. And this is the field I want to look most of and discuss now or present to you closer. It's the training environment, and this is how we create training. This is how many athletes you have in a training situation, which facilities you train in. Some of them we can change, some of them we can just to accept and work with. Next slide, please. So in this arrangement of training, you will have, as I said, everything like the general conditions, like I already mentioned with the facilities and with how many people you have, but you have also have rules and duties you create. Like example, like tell athletes that have to be on time, tell them what to do, when to do, and this is really important. This is often more important, in my opinion, than where you train or how many people you have, because it's really, this is the key factor for this is the base to work together. And coexistence between coaches, athletes, other staff members, team members is only possible if you have clear rules. Everyone knows how to act, know what to respect, know what's allowed, and know what are no-goes, for example. You have to decide for sure between individual sports and team sports, because you have for sure big influences by team members in a team sport. If you have an individual sport, it's more or less just the individual athlete by himself. And you will have for sure disciplines where it's a little bit mixed. For example, in my sport of alpine skiing, we travel the whole year as a team, but in the end, it's individual sport. So you have influences that only concentrate on this individual athlete, like how good he is on transferring training performance to competition performance, or how he is motivated during training days. On the other hand, we have to travel together, so it's more or less like a team sport on the other hand, and you have to make them stay together in rooms, and they have to accept each other, and they have to have a good relationship. Probably you have to mix up the bedroom snoo after half a season, because if you share a lot of time the same room, probably you will have some tension between some athletes. So this is one part you really have to look at, and because they have to feel good and they have to feel safe to make to perform, and so we really have to look on some of these key factors as well. And a really important point is if you have to be a respectful behavior, not only us as coaches to the athletes, but we also have to make sure we teach the athletes that they have to be respectful for sure to the coaches, but to all staff members, to other athletes, because this is really important to make them, as I said in the task before, to make it to make them feel to make them feel safe. And as Jowett already said, honesty is an important fact. If you want athletes to perform better in the future, you want to make them go on, to make them improve, you have to tell them this is where you are, and you have to do this to get better. There's no sense in telling non-realistic things, and because they will get it in the end. And so this is really important, to be honest, but on the same time respectful, it's not us to say you're good, you're bad. You just tell them this is the reality, this is where you are. If you want to get there, you have to do this, and always do this in a positive way. You don't tell athletes first, you're bad at this. Tell them this was good, but try a little bit more of this, for example. And so you and always try to be positive on each term, like because athletes always will, or often will say, I will get this, I do bad today. Always tell them it's not too bad. Look at this, take this positive, and always enforce them to be positive by themselves. This is really important to improve, even especially on the long stretch, because the more you train and the more training age you will reach, they will need a lot of training to get even small improvements. And so you need to be positive, to believe, and still there's something the next step you can take. And this is why it's really important to be positive. And this is all these rules or all these points have guiltiness for all the staff members. So if you have a bigger team, or you're not alone with one athlete, you have more team members, you always have to make sure that these rules are guilty for everyone, and everyone respects that, and everyone knows that this is where you have to go to through a season or a training day. Next slide, please. So for you, as if I should give you a reminder what's important in the daily training, or in a season, or in work with the athlete. So there are some things that are, for me, try to think all the time of, that the training environment should be a safe place. So because they only improve when they feel relaxed and feel safe. Don't yell at athletes. This is like for me like a basic rule. If you think back, like for 10-20 years, it was really normal that a coach was more or less yelling. This is not up to date anymore. You have to, as I said, you have to be positive, explain them where they are, where they have to go to, and try to always keep your, like it's normal as a coach. You're really emotional because you want them to get better and you feel with them. But it's not good for athletes to, if someone yells at them, if they feel you get angry, they think that they have done something wrong, and this is not good for their improvement. So this is one like key fact, that you don't yell at them. And as I said, they will not make mistakes on purpose. Always remind that, like, athletes want to do their best. They want to perform. And if they don't do good, they can't do better. Like, so it's our job to help them to get better and perform. So always keep that in mind and help them. And it's really difficult. Like, you have some sympathy and antipathy with some athletes. This is probably just normal. Like, you will not like each athlete the same. Like it's with all the people in life. Some people we really like, some people we don't like that much. But in a training situation with the whole team, it's really important to treat each athlete the same, or try to treat each athlete the same, because they will feel it, and then they will. If you don't treat them, you have a favorite athlete, and you treat this athlete better. The other athletes will get jealous, or they will ask themselves why I'm not treated this way, and so it's not a safe environment for them anymore, and they will feel, and they will not perform in the end. So always try to do this for everyone. But this doesn't mean that you have not individual needs, individual treatment. Like, you have in training situation, you treat everyone the same, but this means it's the same rules for everyone. But if there's some athletes that have a bad day, they will probably need you more. Or you have an athlete that has a run and has one good game or one good competition after another, this athlete will probably need you not that much anymore. So this is my experience over the last few years with my team. So you have to keep an eye on when an athlete needs you really, like in competition situation, for example, we had our top athlete having a really bad first run on the Paralympic Games. So her like main goal for 4 years, and she was really bad for her niveau. She was really behind her own expectation, and she was really upset, and we had to make sure as a team, or me as a head coach, to make her able to compete for the second run again, and to probably make the result still better. And in the end we did it, but it was a really big act of helping her, and it was a real treatment in that case. Always have an eye on where you should be at the moment. The good athletes, it's easy to work with a good athlete and stand next to him, and this is my athlete and he's good. But if you as a coach are truly needed is when an athlete is in a development deep, in a performance deep, or is not happy with the performance. And probably the most important part, not even with an athlete, even with the team, is that communication is key. Like you have to tell them what to do, when to do, what you expect from them, what you as a coach or a team leader, or what the whole staff needs to do and is willed to do for them. It's really important, because if you don't tell them, they don't know. And if they don't know, they cannot perform and not to follow. Next, please. Since the last years, there have been some challenges coming up to me as well, and I think everyone had some challenges in his daily life as a coach. And just to show you what my experience is for this, I'm still quite young, with not even 40 years, but there's already a generation conflict with the age of athletes we have nowadays, because they are like digital natives. It's sometimes completely different. They have it changed a lot, like the cell phone use or the social media use, or even the diets of the athletes. We have vegetarians, vegans, like some special needs on that as well. It changes, and you have to respect that, and you have to accept that, and it's not easy always to by each need, but it's important, as I said earlier, to be respectful and tell them and describe them how you can handle this. And for social media, cell phones, what for my job was the last years probably the biggest part of discussion, even in Corona, when we told them don't post this and this. You have to make clear rules as well for social media and cell phone use. Like for if you have a training camp, it's important to have a cell phone free like environment, because it's really important to focus on training. So you give them an overview when they are allowed to use the cell phone, and you just explain them why it's not allowed to use the cell phone. Because if you just deny to use the cell phone, they will not understand. But if you explain them, you need the time to focus on performance, they will absolutely understand. And for sure, as I said earlier, the sympathy and the antipathy are really big challenges. Here from my, it's not even the sympathy, antipathy, sometimes it's the communication as well, because you will not, sometimes athletes don't understand, for example, me, when I describe something, and other athletes understand on the beginning, but they will understand my assistant coach, or they will understand our physical coach. So here you can always, if you have a bigger team, you know the load, you can always have a look on it. If you create a situation where they probably work or communicate through other staff members, if it's easier for an athlete, because in the end you make sure that you get the best outcome of the training. Next slide, please. To get the best out of every goal in the end, I think one of the key, one really important thing is that they are motivated. And so the things I described are like create a safe surrounding, make clear rules where they know what to do. This is really important for them to motivate themselves and stay motivated through a season. Face reality. Tell them you are here, you have to go there. This makes it easier for them to plan and keeps the motivation up. So this is linked to each other. Really important is that you explain them why to do things and give them clear tasks. It's not easy. Yeah, it's not good if you tell them this is bad, but try better. This is not enough. Explain them what to do and do this. Like you have like an aim for training camp, or you have a aim for a training session, and then they can rely on that and go on. Like if you have a complicated sport, for example, like in alpine skiing, it's sometimes not enough just to explain them. We tried the last few years, for example, to make the theory of alpine skiing with our athletes. And this helped a lot to improve, because they understand if you give corrections on field, you tell them do this, they link to the theory and they understand it better. And really important for the athletes is that they have goals to aim for. So you give them not just, like I said, in a training session, a short-term goal, you give them term goals and long-term goals where they should be, or better said, where they want to be in 1 year, 2 year, or on the long stretch. And for sure, structure and reliability is really important for athletes to perform. Like, and I mean with structure and reliability, that you give them a plan how a season should look like, a calendar when training is, and that this training, if you put it in the calendar, that it takes place and you be there. And at the end, probably one of the most difficult points, we as coaches, we truly act as role models for them, especially if you're younger athletes. So be on time, be positive, and tell them and show them that, or show them your work ethic, so they can have a good work ethic as well. And I know this is not always easy, because we as coaches sometimes have bad day as well. But we expect from our athletes that they perform each day and they are motivated in training. So should we. Okay. So thank you very much. This is some of my experience in daily work as a coach, and I hope you enjoyed.
Conferencia e-coach King. La sexta conferencia de e-coach tendrá lugar los días 18 y 19 de noviembre del 2022 en Frankfurt, Alemania. Esta será la primera conferencia presencial desde la pandemia de COVID. Enlace para los boletos disponible en el chat. Recursos. Olimpiadas Especiales ofrece una variedad de recursos maravillosas para que los entrenadores continúen aprendiendo y mejorando su conocimiento de entrenamiento. La plataforma de aprendizaje en línea de Olimpiadas Especiales tiene una gran cantidad de cursos y formaciones relacionados con el entrenamiento, estado físico, salud y comportamiento de protección. Asegurarse de entrar a la plataforma y completar los cursos para aprender la información valiosa para ser entrenador. Enlace en de la plataforma de aprendizaje disponible en el chat. Enlace a la página de recursos. Nuevo tablero para la serie de seminarios de web de entrenadores. Este año hemos creado un nuevo tablero interactivo para que puedan involucrarse más con la serie de seminarios web. Este tablero se encontrará en enlace a recursos, grabaciones de seminarios anteriores, las diapositivas del presentador y la opinión de hacer preguntas a nuestros presentadores y anfitriones. Este tablero iniciativo encontrará todo relacionado a nuestra serie de seminarios web. Asegúrate de dejar sus preguntas a tiempo para la próxima semana. El tablero también tendrá enlace a los recursos mencionados por la profesora Jowett en su presentación de hoy. A continuación presentamos el video de eCoach. Después de haber visto estos fantásticos recursos, ahora nos tomaremos unos minutos para ver a nuestros compañeros de eCoach King, una nueva iniciativa para reconocer que el audio trabajo de los entrenadores en la campaña campeón de eCoach Kings. Una de nuestras organizaciones aliadas es la Universidad de Liverpool, John Mothers, la cual está llevando a cabo nuestra investigación sobre el entrenamiento de Olimpiadas Especiales. Si te gustaría conocer más y participar en esta investigación, puede comunicarse con la señora Amy Howard a través de su correo electrónico que aparece en la pantalla. El próximo seminario web será el último de la serie de seminarios de entrenadores del año 2022. Este abordará temas de salud y actitud física, importante para que los entrenadores conozcan. El seminario será dirigido por el grandioso Board de Olimpiadas Especiales Marta. Nuestros exponentes serán Mónica Fouker y Tim Norton. Nuevamente agradecemos a nuestro patrocinador Gallagher por su apoyo a la serie de seminarios web para entrenadores de Olimpiadas Especiales. Regístrate ahora si aún no has hecho, no se lo pierdan.